He thought he was untouchable. A billionaire surrounded by money, power, and armed security, sitting calmly in a luxury restaurant he owned. No threats, no warnings, no danger in sight. Then behind him, a trembling whisper cut through the silence. A waitress, barely noticed by anyone, softly said words that would freeze his blood. "I know who's trying to kill you." In that instant, the world slowed. His empire, his wealth, his confidence, none of it mattered anymore. Because the most dangerous secret of his life didn't come from an enemy or a rival, it came from someone he would have never looked twice at. And what he did next didn't just save his life. It destroyed powerful people and changed his soul forever. The moment that changed everything happened in the quietest way possible. Not with gunfire or alarms, not with a dramatic confrontation, but with a single whispered sentence carried by accident through a space meant for comfort and luxury. 1 second, the billionaire believed he was untouchable, protected by money, power, and carefully built walls. The next second, his entire reality cracked open when he realized someone close enough to refill his glass knew a secret that could end his life. In that instant, fear didn't scream. It froze. Before we go any further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that even the smallest voice can change a powerful destiny, take a moment to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who loves emotional stories, and subscribe to the channel for more deeply moving content. Ethan Hale had built his empire the way most people imagined billionaires did, through relentless work, sleepless nights, and decisions that sacrificed comfort for control. His name was carved into skyscrapers, whispered in boardrooms, and printed in magazines beside words like visionary and ruthless. Yet beneath the tailored suits and armored confidence was a man who had learned early that trust was expensive and mistakes were deadly. Years ago, betrayal had cost him a business partner and nearly his life, and since then, Ethan had lived with a quiet paranoia that never fully left him. He surrounded himself with private security, advanced surveillance, and a schedule so unpredictable that even his assistants struggled to keep up. Control was his armor. That afternoon, he sat alone in a high-end restaurant tucked inside one of his own buildings. It was meant to be a safe space, a place where he could breathe without cameras or expectations. The restaurant staff had been vetted extensively, each background checked and rechecked. That was why the whisper unsettled him so deeply. It came from behind him, soft and trembling, not meant for his ears at all. A young waitress, barely noticeable among the polished environment, leaned toward another staff member near the service station. Her face was pale, her hands shaking as she murmured words that sliced through Ethan's sense of security. She said she knew who was trying to kill him. Ethan didn't turn immediately. Years of survival instincts told him stillness was safer than reaction. His heart slowed artificially, his mind accelerating instead. He listened as the sound of footsteps moved away, as plates clinked, as normal life continued around him. No one screamed, no one ran. Yet for Ethan, the world had tilted. He had known threats existed. Anonymous warnings arrived often, most of them empty. But this felt different. This came from someone who looked afraid, not powerful. Someone with nothing to gain from lying. When Ethan finally stood, his bodyguard noticed the change instantly. But Ethan said nothing, only signaling to leave. The rest of the day passed in a blur of increased security measures, encrypted calls, and internal investigations. Every executive, every rival, every past enemy was reconsidered. Still, none of it explained the waitress. She wasn't on any radar. She wasn't connected to corporate warfare or financial revenge. She was invisible. And yet, she held knowledge that made her dangerous simply by existing. By evening, Ethan demanded to see her personnel file. Her name was Lena Morales, 26 years old. No criminal record, no known affiliations. She had started working at the restaurant 3 months earlier. Her performance reviews described her as quiet, efficient, and observant. That last word lingered in Ethan's mind. Observant people noticed patterns others ignored. Observant people survived. He ordered discreet surveillance rather than confrontation. Ethan had learned that panic revealed more than pressure. Over the next 2 days, his security team followed Lena's movements outside work. She lived modestly, took public transportation, and avoided social gatherings. But one detail stood out. Every night, she stopped at the same hospital for nearly an hour. When investigators dug deeper, they found a long-term patient registered under a protected identity. The patient was her father, a former forensic accountant who had vanished from the financial world years earlier. Ethan's past collided with his present.
That accountant had once worked for a subsidiary of Ethan's company before uncovering a massive laundering operation tied not to Ethan, but to someone he had trusted implicitly. A man who had since climbed higher in Ethan's inner circle. Officially, the accountant had resigned due to health reasons. Unofficially, he had been silenced, and now his daughter was serving food in a restaurant owned by the very man whose shadow loomed over her family's suffering. When Ethan finally arranged to meet Lena privately, he did so without his usual intimidation tactics. No towering offices, no long tables, just a quiet room and 2 chairs. Lena arrived guarded but determined. She didn't beg, she didn't accuse, she explained everything in a steady voice that carried years of suppressed fear. Her father had uncovered evidence that tied a powerful executive to criminal networks willing to eliminate obstacles permanently. Before he could expose it, he was attacked, left alive but broken. Since then, Lena had lived with the knowledge that the same people who ruined her father were now circling Ethan, using his trust as their weapon. Ethan listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. Inside, something unfamiliar stirred. Guilt, not for the crimes he hadn't committed, but for the blindness that allowed them to exist under his empire. For years, he had believed control equaled safety. Yet control had also created distance, and in that distance, monsters thrived. What silenced everyone wasn't Ethan's anger, it was his choice. Instead of burying the information or quietly eliminating the threat, he did the unthinkable. He exposed it all. He handed over evidence to authorities, knowing full well it would destabilize his company, shatter public trust, and cost him billions. The executive responsible was arrested within weeks, along with several collaborators. This scandal dominated headlines, and Ethan's name was no longer associated with perfection, but with accountability. The assassination attempt was real. Security footage later confirmed suspicious movements, altered schedules, and tampered systems that had nearly aligned perfectly. Lena's whisper had arrived just in time. In the aftermath, Ethan visited the hospital where Lena's father stayed. He didn't come as a billionaire or a savior. He came as a man confronting the consequences of his ambition. He funded the best care without conditions, without publicity. When Lena tried to thank him, he stopped her gently. Some debts, he said, weren't meant to be repaid with gratitude, but with change. Months passed. Ethan's empire shrank, but it became cleaner, more transparent. Employees noticed a shift, the culture softened, decisions considered people, not just profit. Lena left her job at the restaurant and returned to school, supported quietly by a scholarship Ethan never claimed credit for. Her father slowly improved, his mind clearer, his spirit lighter, knowing the truth was no longer buried. Ethan, for the first time in decades, slept without the weight of suspicion pressing against his chest. He understood now that survival wasn't about building higher walls, but about listening to the whispers that walls tried to block out. If this story has touched your heart so far, please pause for a moment and share your feelings in the comments. Let us know what part resonated with you the most, and consider engaging with the video so more people can experience this message. As time went on, Ethan often reflected on how close he had come to becoming another headline, another cautionary tale of power undone by arrogance. It wasn't a rival's threat that saved him. It was the courage of someone who had every reason to stay silent, but chose to speak anyway. Lena had risked her life not for revenge, not for reward, but because she believed that truth still mattered. Before we reach the end, here's a special request. Please comment the word hope. If you believe that even in the darkest systems, one brave act can bring light. Ethan never returned to that restaurant as a customer. Instead, he funded a training program for service workers, creating pathways into education and leadership, honoring the lesson that wisdom often hides in overlooked places. His legacy shifted from domination to protection, from fear to responsibility. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you see the world a little differently, please like, comment, and share this video. Your engagement helps stories like this reach hearts that need them. Sometimes, all it takes to save a life is the courage to whisper the truth, and the humility to listen.